are really, really excited. We have a fantastic guest today who you're about to meet, and he will be answering so many of the questions and discussing so many of the topics that people have just written to me and written to Dave and said, hey, can you do a webinar on the financial aspects of what's going on with the COVID-19 pandemic. So welcome today. I'm Dr. Richard Maddow, co-founder of the Maddow Center for Dental Practice Success. And I'm here, I was going to point, but on these Zoom webinars, you never know which way everybody's oriented. So I'll say I'm here somewhere with my co-founder and brother, Dr. David Maddow. How are you doing today, Dave?
Hey, I'm fine, Rich, and it's fantastic to be here. Right, as long as you don't point up or down, I think we're probably next to each other. But you never know. Sometimes on some screens, so you can point any way you want. It's fine. But it's great to be here. Welcome everybody. We're gonna have some really great information today with a very special guest.
This is our third webinar since this whole crazy pandemic thing started, and it's really been great to connect with dentists and team members from all around the country, all around the world actually. I know we're sadly getting used to this remote way of sending out knowledge, but it's been great, and we've gotten so many nice comments, and we really want to thank everybody. As you can see, I'm here in my hometown of Baltimore, Maryland. And Dave, where are you today? It looks like you're out in the mountains somewhere.
Salt Lake City.
Excellent. Just like I pictured it.
Skyscrapers, everything.
Everything, right. Fantastic. We had a bunch of comments after our first two webinars, which we did last week. And if you have not gotten an email from us, but you still have a question about that, if you want to connect with one of our coaches, or me and Dave, or Whitney, who's our marketing expert, and you can't remember the emails, just send it to info, I-N-F-O, @maddow.com, and we promise the right person will get it. So it's always easier to remember, info @maddow.com.
Yeah, so, okay, pass it right over to me, Rich.
What I was doing. It was like the silent pass. It was like a nod.
The silent pass.
Right.
So yeah, I'm looking at the number of people on this webinar ticking up. We just started. We're close to 400. We've got probably close to 1,000 that are going to be on here. We really appreciate it. By the way, if you're new to us, if you never have been on a Maddow webinar, if you've never done anything with the Maddow Center or the Maddow Brothers, welcome. We really appreciate you. Rich and I have been helping dentists and team members. Rich, hell, it's been, I hate to say it,
30 years.
It's been like I was going to say over 3 decades. When you get this old, you speak in terms of decades and no longer years. That's really scary.
Just warn me before it's centuries. That's what
So welcome. We really appreciate you. As Rich said, if you ever have any questions about anything, we can be reached at info@maddow.com. And by the way, we are live streaming this. So not only are you on this webinar today through Zoom, but we're live streaming on our Facebook page, which is the Maddow Center for Dental Practice Success. So we're there. We're also on our group page called it's a group page. It's just a group. It's not really a page. It's a group called the Dental Place. And by the way, even after the webinar is finished, anytime, hang out with us on the Dental Place. You just do a search for the Dental Place. It'll come up. It's a really good group of dentists and team members on Facebook that if you ever have any questions, you're not sure about something, even when we get beyond this COVID-19 crisis, we're here for you. And not only that, all of our group members are here for you. It's a really good, tight-knit group, and you'll get answers to your questions, so you're never alone. But you can watch the replay on the Facebook stream, or you can also go to our YouTube page, which, by the way, is usually reserved for our podcast, which is called the Dental Practice Fixtures. We're taking a little bit of a break from our podcast because we call offices. We ask, we try to find out, we try to kind of trip up front desk people and try to educate that way. But we feel right now is not a great time to do that. So we're actually using our podcast YouTube page for replays of these webinars. So if you just do a search on YouTube for the Dental Practice Fixers, exactly the way it sounds, the Dental Practice Fixers, you'll be able to go and watch the replay of the webinar there. So there are a lot of places you can watch the webinar. We thank you very much. Also, before I turn it back over to Rich, we're going to be taking questions. We're going to be monitoring kind of chat as we're doing this webinar today. And the easiest way to do that is when you're on your screen, you should see at the very bottom, if you hover over the bottom, it'll say Q&A. Now there's also, I'm going to make sure I'm right. Actually, chat. They changed this up a little bit. Q&A.
I was going to say,
We want to do.
Dr. Flack knows how to do it correctly on the chat. We want to know.
It's actually chat. So actually, yeah. So I just upgraded my Zoom and they changed it around. It's a different side now. So if you go to the button that says chat, that's very important because we may not be monitoring the one that says Q&A. If you go to the one that says chat, it'll open up a little box for you. And make sure you take a look at that drop-down little menu there and make sure it says to all panelists and attendees. That way, if you type a question or any kind of comment, everybody here will see it. Now, if you want to type something just totally private to me, to Rich, or to Alan, who we're going to be introducing in a second, then you can do that as well. But generally, if you're going to be saying something, some type of chat, make sure you click on all panelists and attendees, and everybody will see it. And before I turn it back over to Rich, we did something on our last webinar last week. It was pretty cool. And since we've got right now, what are we, close to 500 people, go into the chat box right now. Make sure you say all panelists and attendees and tell us where you are from. We want to see where you're from. So thanks so much again for being here. We really appreciate that.
Let's see it. All panelists and attendees, where are you from? Wow, somebody's from a really long place.
Downers Grove, Illinois.
Kansas, Ohio. Wow, it's going fast. Minnesota.
Too fast.
Danbury, Connecticut.
Honolulu. Wow, all the way from Honolulu. Very cool. Very cool.
Wow, West Indies. Unbelievable. Port Lavaca, Texas. Temecula, California.
Temecula, Colorado.
Iowa City, Iowa. Welcome.
Cobb, Texas.
Joyzy, what exit? Redondo Beach sounds like a nice place to be sheltering in place.
St. Louis, Missouri.
Home of the late Chuck Berry. Louisville, Kentucky. Glad that you guys were able to reschedule the Derby in Louisville. That's a tradition that people should never miss out on.
Wait, did they what's the schedule? When's the schedule?
Rescheduled for the fall. And now here in Baltimore, we're kind of scrambling to reschedule the Preakness. It's supposed to, it's traditionally 2 weeks after. But,
right.
If Moscow, Idaho, wow. Yet. Pure Michigan. I love when people write a little thing about this. Somebody wants us to get down to business. Okay, we will.
Hey, come on, we gotta have a little fun, right? Come on.
San Diego, cute. I actually got a message on here that my image is frozen. It doesn't look frozen to me. I don't know. Is my image frozen to everyone else?
It looks fine here. I think it might be their computer, maybe.
Well, it was from Dr. Marshall Maddow. I think he's using like a PC from 1993. So
I think he's usually got Tandy X-Team90 or something.
Great, looks good. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for doing that. Well, somebody has no image of me. Rhonda, you're probably lucky. Mark Sokolov's from Wuhan, China. Glad to hear that.
Oh, no, God. Keep that away from us, please.
I'm telling you. Tim Reagan from Homedale. Oh, great outdoor music venue in Homedale, New Jersey.
Somebody said, handsome bunch, you might need glasses very, very badly.
I think they were just talking about our guest and not us. When they said that. So before we introduce our guest, which we're going to do in a minute, many of you who have been to our seminars and our webinars, it's kind of a tradition in Mattowland that when we begin a webinar or a seminar, we like to start with something maybe not even related to the topic, but kind of a quick hitter. It's going to be easy to do. Anyone can do it and either save you money or make you money right away. And we have that prepared for you today. So if you're listening, you're going to get a ton of information out of this webinar. But even if you get nothing out of it, we're going to give you one tip right at the beginning that we know will save you money each and every month. And it's very timely as well. So Sylvia, if you can pop the first slide up, we've got a couple slides. I want to tell you about a really cool.
Hey, Rich, I'm sorry. Let me interrupt for a second. Many people
pause me anytime.
No, the only reason I'm saying that is because many people said that you're frozen, and the message you're about to give is super, super important. So, guys, can you see Rich? Can you, more importantly, right now, can you hear Rich, because he's going to be showing some slides, which I think will be fine. Can you hear him? We're getting a lot of yeses. Okay,
50,
Rich,
50.
Okay, we're good. Thanks, guys.
Yes, but brakes. Oh, I thought it said yes, but breasts. I was going to say, that's a really weird comment. These things go flying by so fast. You can hear but not see. I so much apologize if you can't see
Rich,
me.
After you introduce Alan, I think you'll get out and get back in. I think it'll probably be fine. Yeah. But this stuff. Yeah.
I was thinking maybe I'm in an area with bad Wi-Fi, but so anyway, still one of the first I want to tell you about a company we discovered not that long ago, and I'm not seeing any slides up there. Sylvia, maybe Sylvia can't hear me.
Sylvia, can you go ahead and put up the first slide, please, if you can hear me?
S. Young says I don't look so good. I can't do much about that. Maybe I should shave. We always start with a little technical difficulty.
We've got a bunch of wise guys here today, don't we?
Great, fantastic. So anyway, we discovered something that we actually use at the Maddow Center, and we've recommended it to thousands of dentists, and so many people kind of took advantage of that. We call it the best way to save money every single month, and it's by using a company called Fat Merchant for your credit card processing. So what's so great about Fat Merchant? You know, every bank is calling you saying, hey, switch to us. You'll save 0.0000001% on your credit card processing. Well, Fat Merchant doesn't charge an overage fee. When you put your charges through in your practice, you have to pay Visa, MasterCard, American Express a certain fee, but then you're also paying a percentage fee to your credit card processor. And you can be part of that as the overage percentage. Well, Fat Merchant doesn't charge an overage percentage at all. They just charge a very, very small flat monthly fee. It's the same fee every month. It's much smaller than you were paying as your overage percentage. So by making that one tiny, tiny change at the Maddow Center, we saved thousands and thousands of dollars per year. Then we told some dental practices about it, and they were experiencing similar things. So we love to recommend Fat Merchant to every dental practice for your credit card processing. It's simple to do. You make one phone call and you'll save money on autopilot every single month. Sylvia, put up the next slide because we were really glad to see that. After we recommended them, they were voted by US News and World Report the #1 credit card processing company for small businesses like dental practices. US News said transaction fees are lower, they've got 24/7 customer support, they're a cost saving solution. We found all of that to be true, along with so many dental practices across the country now that are using Fat Merchant. So Dave and I always say it's the no-brainers, no-brainer. So we'll show you how to get in touch with them on the next slide. We set up a little easy to remember site. You just go to maddow.com/save, give her information. Somebody from Fat Merchant will be contacting you with everything you need to know. But essentially, it's just seamless. You do one little thing and boom, on autopilot every single month, you're saving money. If for some reason you're not internet savvy, which won't be the case since you're attending this webinar, you can call that number as well. That's their dedicated number just for dental folks, 844-860-9951. So go to maddow.com/save, start using Fat Merchant. Like we do at the Maddow Center, you'll save money each and every month. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, is this really a good time for me to switch? Because let's face it, we're not doing a heck of a lot of patient charges this month and probably next month, unfortunately. So there are two reasons why actually this is the best time for you to switch. Sylvie, if you can move to the next slide. Right now, you know, you're kind of looking for things to do to stay busy, so you won't have to spend any patient time doing this. You'll simply make the save. But Sylvie, if you could go to the next slide too, we'll show you that since Fat Merchant is sensitive to the fact that our cash flow these next couple months is not really going to be what we're accustomed to having, they're going to waive their processing fee for the next 2 months. So you get 2 months of completely subscription-free processing. So now's the time to switch to Fat Merchant. You've got the time to do it. You get the 2 months of subscription-free processing. Then after you do it, you'll simply be saving money each and every month. So just go to maddow.com/save. You'll be on your way, and you will love Fat Merchant just like we do at the Maddow Center, and just like so many dentists across the country are doing. So again, we'd love to start our seminars and webinars with a real simple tip. Easy to do, seamless, saves you money. Boom, here it is. Okay, maddow.com/save. Sylvie, we can take the slides down now because we're about to get to the part that everybody has been waiting for. Again, Dave and I love hearing questions and comments from our Maddow friends and from people that don't really know us that well all across North America. And as we said earlier, we've been flooded with questions about all this financial stuff, about applying for the programs and dealing with team members, you know, just so many questions. And as we always say, we don't know everything. We never say that we know everything. But one thing we do know, I'm proud to say, is getting in touch with the right people for each thing. And we happen to be lucky enough to not just know, but be really good friends with the absolute person you want to be hearing from when it comes to these matters. His name is Alan Schiff. He's the founder of Schiff & Associates. Alan's a CPA and a certified fraud examiner. He founded this firm, and they work exclusively with dentists. So because of that, he is the accounting firm that you want to go to when you have money questions. They've won many awards, including the industry-specific firm from Smart CEO Magazine, which means of all the firms that specialize in a niche, he's at the top of his game. So that's fantastic. He's also president of the American Academy of Dental CPAs. All the CPAs across the country that work with dentists have this organization. He's president of the organization. So we know that he is the man. As you can imagine, his schedule's been incredibly busy. He's the most popular guy in town right now. He's doing things for the ADA and many other organizations, but we were lucky to snag him. So I'm going to stop blabbing. Dave's going to stop blabbing. And we're really, really happy and proud to introduce our speaker today, Alan Schiff, CPA. Alan, welcome and thanks for being here.
Rich, thank you. David, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm the most popular guy in town, Rich, because everything's closed. Restaurants are closed. You can't go to Camden Yards. Pimlico's closed. Laurel's closed. All the casinos are closed. There's nothing to do other than listen to a webinar. That's funny. I'm honored, guys. Rich and Dave, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored that you asked me to share your knowledge with all of your clients. We have a lot to share. I thought instead of doing a PowerPoint, it would just be easier just to share all the information that's taken place since mid-March through today, particularly with all the financing that's available for dentists. And I'm going to encourage Rich and Dave that all of the listeners grab a piece of paper and pencil to please take notes. I'm going to give you so much information over the next hour and a half that I will tell you it's going to be, yeah, you got your pad of paper. Yeah, there you go. I'm proud of you, Rich. You may need that full pad, by the way, because I got a lot of notes for you. So I'm going to give you a lot of information over the next hour and a half, and it may seem a little convoluted. You may have to potentially watch this this webinar again to try to reassure yourself of the information you heard. I am the president of the Academy of Dental CPAs. I'm very proud of that. We were founded in 2001 after September 11th. We have 24 dental CPA firms across the nation that represent in excess of 9,000 dental practices, 9,000 practices. We talk daily. Normally the email exchanges are probably maybe 10, 15, 20 a day. Now it's like 150 to 200 a day because of how fluid the situation is and how everything is changing. So let's go back to March the 18th. March 18th is when you started to hear about the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act. You heard about the sick pay. And then all of a sudden, like a week later, we're up to March the 27th, President Trump signs the CARES Act. And that's what I really want to share with you today is the CARES Act. And that's what's really most important to all of you in terms of where we are financially, what are our opportunities, and where kind of like where do we go from here. So March the 27th, the president signs the CARES Act. And the way it was supposed to work was once the president signs the act, it takes 15 days for the act to become law. And you need various governmental agencies to chime in, like Department of Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, like Health and Human Services, and they all have a chance to take a look at the act. So what happens is the president signs it on March the 27th, and you have 15 days. So there's 4 days in March and 11 days in April. So that gets you to 15. So that would be April 11th. However, we're sitting here on April the 9th. And what happens is the initial part of the CARES Act was the EIDL grants. EIDL is EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan grants. And everybody heard you would get up to $10,000 of free money, even if you were approved or denied, for a grant. So the only really credit decision the SBA had to make in terms of giving you a grant was based on your credit score. And they later asked for what was your annual collections and what were your annual expenses. Once you get the grant, you're now potentially approved for an EIDL loan. And that's where potentially the first decision-making process comes in. What can you use the EIDL loan for? How's it priced? How does it work? So let's go through it. The EIDL loan will be determined after you get the EIDL grant. It's based on your credit score, once again, your annual collections and your annual expenses. The EIDL loan will be priced at 3.75 fixed for 30 years. Let me say that again. The EIDL loan is priced at 3.75 fixed for 30 years. That is really, really cheap money. And many of you may want to borrow for the EIDL loan. If you choose to use it initially, you can only use it on current expenses. Like, for example, when many of the state associations, state boards, and the ADA asked us to close somewhere around March the 16th, March the 17th, you had payables. So you may owe dental supplies, you may have owed lab fees, maybe you owed the Maddow brothers for their monthly fee, just teasing you. But you had other expenses. You could have things like the Manforce, Lighthouse, Bird Eye, all those different services, your technology company, all those types of expenses, other than payroll, I'm going to come back to payroll, other than payroll, should be paid with your EIDL loan. So the loan, once again, is priced at 3.75. It's fixed for 30 years. The maximum EIDL loan anybody would be awarded is $2 million, $2 million. As of the Thursday after the loans came out, 90% approval. You do have to give a personal guarantee. And here's a good thing. For the first 12 months, no payments. No payments. Interest does accrue. And you need to have 500 or fewer employees. So that's the EIDL loan. Now you say, well, Alan, we have payroll right now. Could we use it for payroll? Well, if you choose to use it for payroll, then what happens is that portion of the EIDL loan would have to be rolled into the PPP loan. So you're going to hear this. It's like you guys explaining MOD to me, and here I'm explaining a PPP loan to you, a trip P. So the PPP stands for Paycheck Protection Program, Paycheck Protection Program. And once again, if you use any part of the EIDL loan, it must be rolled in to the Payroll Protection Program. Now, you may say to yourself, okay, so far so good. Where do we go from here? Well, where do you go from here is the PPP loans come into existence after you get the EIDL grant and the EIDL loan. Now you apply for the PPP loan. So coming back to the timeline was March the 27th, the president signed the bill. There was 15 days to cure the bill to April 11th. And that's during this period of time and leading up to April 11th, you should have gotten your EIDL grant and you should have started applying for your EIDL loan after you get your grant. However, that's not how it worked. And that is why I asked Rich and Dave when they were so nice, they asked me to present this. I said, this is so timely. We have to do this as soon as possible. And today we're sitting here on April the 9th, and things are still not certain, not very clear, and it's creating a lot of confusion. So what does that mean? So March the 27th, the president signs the bill. April 11th, the bill becomes final, official. We're not even at April 11th. During that period, you file for the EIDL grant. Once you get the grant, you then get approved for an EIDL loan, and then you file for the PPP loan. That is not how it's happening on April 9th. So unfortunately, on April 9th, there have been, out of the 9,000 dental practices the ADCPA represents, which I currently represent 265 of them, not one of our clients, either locally or nationwide, has received an EIDL grant. Not one. It would be interesting, Rich and Dave, out of the almost 550 some folks on this webinar, whether or not anybody else has received an EIDL grant across the nation. That we could have that as a question at the end. But in any event, the EIDL program did not work like it was intended for, and now what you're having is panic to file for the PPP loan. So the PPP loan is called the Paycheck Protection Payroll Protection Program. That loan, there's no fees, there's no personal guarantee, there's no collateral. Initially, it came out with a 4% interest, then it changed to 0.5%, that's a 0.5%, and now it just changed again to 1%. Initially, it came out with 10-year amortization, and now it's 2-year amortization. and it keeps changing. So if you're talking to your CPA and they keep changing it, it is not your CPA's fault. This is the U.S. Treasury and the SBA at its best. So here's what you got. You have a 1% loan payable over 2 years with the first 6 months, no payments. So if you get a PPP loan, what happens is you would use the PPP loan for particularly payroll cost and any additional expenses that you would have, like rent or mortgage or utilities, to include all of the 401k payments and or symbol payments that you have when you get the PPP loan. So the confusion came as follows. So I think you guys are starting to understand the timeline. It was March the 27th. During that period of time, April 11th, the EIDL grants, EIDL loans were supposed to happen. Then the PPP loans. The PPP loans were put together. It's $349 billion that Congress approved for us to pay when our employees come back to work. Right now, all the employees, I'm saying all, most of you have your employees on unemployment. So, and many of them are going to earn more in unemployment than they will when they come back to work. And that's because there's a federal stimulus of $600 a week in addition to the weekly unemployment. Here in Baltimore, the maximum unemployment an employee could receive is $430 a week, but they're going to receive another $600. And that's going to be, each state is different, so each state controls this. So what happens is an employee could get $1,030 right now being on unemployment, $430 plus another $600 from the federal government. Keep in mind the unemployment is taxable, but the problem is we have front desk and chairside that are getting $1,030 a week. They're not going to be too anxious to come back to work, regardless if we get the PPP loan. So what's happening right now is there's a little bit of panic because many of your banks are saying that we've been allotted funds, and if you don't register for the PPP loan, we're going to run out of the PP funds. And that's really true. And you saw that nationally with Wells Fargo. Now, Wells Fargo ran out of funds because of, unfortunately, what happened in the past, and they were mandated with only X amount of funds. Hopefully with the new stimulus package that will pass within the next week or so, which is another $250 billion, Wells Fargo will have some additional monies. They have recently said they are accepting applications for the PPP program. Yesterday, I interviewed the decision maker of dental lending for a really large bank. And I said to him, I said, well, what's going on with these PPP loans? So I took some notes and I want to share with you my notes. He is telling me the request for the PPP loans is much greater. It has much more volume than his existing portfolio. And this is a big player in the dental market. So the existing applications are far superior to what they have in their existing portfolio. He's saying we're flying like a rocket ship. It's a rocket ship that has no parts. We didn't even know the parts because both the U.S. Treasury and the SBA are not giving us any guidance as to what our final documents should look like. He said, I quite frankly do not have enough employees to process these loans. In fact, I could probably use another 2,000 employees just to process the volume of loans. And he went on to say that for those of you that have filed for the PPP loan with your bank, so one of the distinctions I wanted to make clear to you is the EIDL loan can only be filed with the SBA. You would Google SBA Disaster Loan Assistance, and you'll go to the EIDL website. If you actually need the specific URL, I can share that with you. I'd be happy to. But you can Google SBA Disaster Loan, and you can apply there. However, for the PPP loan, you must be using a bank that's an SBA preferred lender. Guys, you must be using a bank that's an SBA preferred lender. There's 1,800 banks nationwide. The largest is probably Bank of America in dentistry. Then you have Wells Fargo, PNC, TD Bank, Zion Bank. You have Sandy Springs, Citizens Bank, First Citizens Bank. Let me think who else. And Affinity Bank in California is another one. And also you have Live Oak Bank in Massachusetts. So that's probably about 90% of the dental market right there. Now, if you forget to initial any part of the questions on the PPP loan application, the application will be refused by the bank, and it will cause you to reapply, which puts you back in line. So this is a first come, first served thing. So hopefully when you went through the questions, there was a question like a criminal activity, questions about do you owe taxes for the prior periods and you haven't paid them. In other words, are you delinquent on taxes? Those types of things. If you haven't answered the questions or didn't initial them, your application won't be accepted and you'll be put back into the queue. Part of the confusion that many of you are hearing from all your friends and colleagues, you could be just chatting within your study clubs, or you may be on a Facebook group. The PP loans, once they're approved by the SBA, even though you're applying with the bank, the SBA notifies your bank, and the bank has 10 days to release the funds. That is where all the drama is happening right now. So most of you have applied for the PPP loan. It's now April 9th. Let's say we're up to April 20th and you finally get an approval. Well, now you have, let's say it's April 20th, and now the bank says, I'm going to release the funds. Most banks are following the U.S. Treasury guidelines, and they have to release the funds. So they have 10 days to release it. Let's say they released it to you on April 30th. Once you get the PPP funds on April 30th, you have 8 weeks to spend those funds in order to get what's called loan forgiveness. Loan forgiveness is just a fancy word for that you don't have to pay back the loan. That's a pretty good thing. So the calculation of the PPP loan is as follows. And there's been a lot of confusion on this. And the reason there's confusion is because the SBA keeps changing the formula. So the latest formula is as follows. You would take the last 12 months, which most banks are measuring from April 1st of 2019 through March 31st of 2020. And you take your payroll for that 12-month period and you divide it by 12. That's the average payroll. The only thing is if your W-2 is $200,000, the payroll is limited to $100,000. You may have an associate making $150,000 and his or her payroll would be limited to $100,000. This is W-2 employees, not 1099s. So now you have your adjusted gross payroll for the year. So hold that number. You add to that to all your like 401k costs or your simple match or potentially your profit sharing or your defined benefit computation, could be a cash balance plan. And you add to that all the health insurance that you paid as a group. And then you add to that all your state unemployment. So it's 4 factors: the payroll, everybody with me? Hopefully, the payroll, your retirement plan, the health insurance, and your state unemployment. And you get a number. And let's say that number is, I don't know, say it's like $240,000, small practice. You would divide it by 12, and that's 20,000. Multiply times 2.5, that would be your PPP loan, $50,000. But you have to submit that financial information with your PPP application in order to be able to have access of the PPP funds. Now that you have the PPP funds of $50,000, you have 8 weeks to spend it. Let's say when you get done with the computation, it's $200,000. So you have $200,000 of free money that you have to spend. And you're sitting here and it's April 30th. And what do we know? What do we see on the national news? Within the COVID-19 crisis, we're at about, I think it's around 14,000 U.S. deaths. And I don't mean to be non-humanistic, but unfortunately the statistics are what they are. 14,000 folks have passed away. It's projected to potentially reach 200,000 people. That's going to take some time to do it, but you're here at April 30th. So what I'm trying to share with you, depending on when we hit the apex of the curve, we're going to have to figure out when we're potentially going to go back to work when this crisis comes to a conclusion. So if you get the funds April 30th, you can't really spend them for what they were intended for. The intention was to give you funds so you wouldn't have to pay it back from the U.S. government, so that in effect you could employ your employees, but all your employees are on unemployment. So you have a choice. What you could do, and there's lots of choices, and we'll probably have a lot of discussion on this. We'll probably have a lot of questions. And I encourage questions, because from questions we all learn. We all learn about different scenarios. But you're sitting here on April 30th with $200,000. You got to spend it in 8 weeks, and all your employees are unemployed. What do you do? Well, you could rehire everybody and start to spend it. And the rule is, as long as you spend 75% of the $200,000 on payroll costs, the loan would be forgiven, because the other 25% would be spent on things like rent or mortgage or interest cost or utilities. Utilities are defined besides gas and electric, like heat, light, and power. It would be your telephone, potentially your internet service, and of course, gas and electric. So the PPP loan, 75% has to be payroll cost being gross payroll, the health insurance, and the retirement plan. The other 25% gets spent on other expenses that have been defined, by the way, utilities, the interest on any debt that you have, mortgage, and or rent. Now, if you rehire everybody, you take them off of unemployment, you pay them, you play by the rules, you meet with your CPA, almost all of your loan will be forgiven. That's a good thing. So you've got money, you paid everybody, and you used the loan for its purpose. But the problem is, the 8 weeks will probably take you up to about June the 30th. And when you get to June 30th, the state boards and the ADA says, no, we can't go back to work. Well, you've used your PPP funds and you used them wisely, but now you got to ask everybody to go back on unemployment unless you want to continue to pay your employees. So that's going to be a decision you'll have to make. Now, in addition to spending 75% of the PPP funds and 25% on these other expenses, you must meet another test. The test is called full-time equivalents, FTEs. So please write this down. You need to take a look at the number of employees that you had as of February 15th, 2020. So let's say you had 20 employees employed that were full-time on February 15th of 2020. You need to have at least 75% brought back by the end of June in order to qualify for the loan forgiveness. If you have less than 75%, that would mean that you wouldn't get total forgiveness, you'll get a partial forgiveness. So 75% of 20 employees would be 15. So you can hire 15, make sure, they don't have to be the same employees, by the way, just make sure you have 15 employees employed, if not more, by the end of June, and you'll qualify for the 75% of the FTEs. And by the way, you may want to hire college interns. If you have children and they're over age 17, you may want to consider hiring them, but I would check with your CPA on that. But you may want to think about what the strategy is to do that in order to meet that. Now, let's say you don't meet any of the tests and you do get a PPP loan for $250,000. Once again, it's a 1% loan payable over 2 years. That's still not a bad deal, because now you have $250,000. You can use it for whatever. You just wouldn't have loan forgiveness, but you do have the money. What I would suggest, and maybe you want to run it by your CPAs as well, is maybe set up a separate checking account for the EIDL loan, if you choose to get an EIDL loan, and if you choose to get a PPP loan, to also set up a separate checking account so all the expenses can be accounted for during this process. You do not have to get both loans. You can get one or the other. Last weekend, I was working with the ADA because what came out was that you can only get one or the other. And as a result of a lot of hard work with the Academy of Dental CPAs and the ADA, we were able to get the folks in Congress to understand that that was kind of ridiculous. And we got them to agree you can get both loans, you can get one loan or the other loan. And that's kind of cool. Now, one last thing, and then I think Rich and Dave will start taking some questions. Here's a major decision that you have to make besides the things I've already given you. Write down RTC, Retention Tax Credit, RTC. So instead of getting a PPP loan because you don't feel you can use it for what it was intended for because of the timing that I've explained to you, and you don't want a loan, and you could care less if it's 1%, and you could care less if you paid it back over 2 years, there's still another opportunity. It's called the retention tax credit. You can't do both, though. You can't have the PPP loan and the retention tax credit. It's either or. The retention tax credit works as follows. You take your collections by quarter and you measure them to the current calendar year. So for example, take January, February, and March. That's the first quarter for 2019. Measure the collections for January, February, and March of 2019 to January, February, and March of 2020. Let's say The collections for the quarter were $300,000, and the collections for this year's quarter was $300,000. They're equal. There's no retention tax credit. And I will tell you, with my clients and also the clients of the ADCPA, which are national, not just local, but national, every client was hitting it so hard for January and February, even part of March of 2020. And I hope we can restore to that, but they came out of the gate with tremendous volumes the first couple of months of 2020. Consumer confidence was an all-time high. Everybody knows where the stock market was, and dentistry was just like booming. And now, unfortunately, the pandemic hit. So now let's talk about the retention tax credit. Let's go to the next quarter, because that's the quarter we're in, and that's potentially where you can get a tax credit. So the next quarter is April, May, and June. April, May, and June. So let's say April, May, and June of 2019, you collected $300,000. Now April, May, and June of 2020, if it's 50% or less of the $300,000, you apply for the credit. Chances are it's probably going to be 50% or less, because we're not open. We don't see we're going to be open for a while. Many states have shut down until August and September. So if you don't think you're going to meet the 50% gross receipts test when you compare quarter to quarter, then you would obtain a tax credit. The credit works based on 50% of an employee's wage up to $10,000. And the credit is good from now. It's actually March the 12th through December 31st. Although it started March the 12th, chances are we wouldn't even use it because we wouldn't meet the 50% gross receipts test in the first quarter, but you would now. So April, May, and June, we meet the test. Unfortunately, we didn't collect 50% of last year's second quarter. So you qualify, but now you got to pay wages. If you pay wages, the wages are up to $10,000, and you would take 50% of the wages. So let's say your office is set up as follows. And Rich and Dave, this is good for your coaches to hear as well. So we could have an office administrator. You could have 2 front desks, 2 chair side, and 2 hygienists. Office administrator, 2 front desks, 2 chair sides, 2 hygienists. That's 7 employees. Let's assume you pay them, and they all are paid at least $10,000 during the quarter. So what you would do is take 50% of 10,000 is 5,000, and you multiply times 7 employees, that's $35,000. That's a tax credit. You would get that for the second quarter. The $10,000 test is an annual test. So once Becky met the $10,000, we wouldn't then reapply her for the third quarter or the fourth quarter. We would have to have other employees for that to handle. So it's $10,000 per employee. So in that case, you would probably get potentially a $35,000 tax credit. And by the way, if you're a C corporation or an S corporation, your wages would apply as well for the tax credit. Tax credit's good because it's a dollar reduction of your tax liability. So I'm about maybe 30 minutes into my spiel, as we would say, Rich and Dave spiel, right? But hopefully that this information is helpful. Hopefully it's timely. You know, you got to kibitz a little bit because there's a lot of stress out there, and you know, it's my job to try to give this to you in almost like kindergarten math, so that you all can understand it and try to relieve some of the stress that you have. And I would encourage you, if you don't have a dental CPA, to please reach out to any of my associates throughout the United States. They all have been amazingly well trained. We have spent hours and hours understanding this CARES Act, and I would say you would be in really great hands. So Rich and Dave, I'll take some questions, and I hope that that all the attendees have found this to be really fruitful and give them more clarity as to something that's very complex.
Good stuff, Alan. Thanks. Before we get into the questions, a couple of things real quickly. We're having some technical difficulties getting our feed onto Facebook right now, but rest assured, Sylvia is working on it, and we will definitely have replays on Facebook on the Matter Center for Dental Practice Success page, as well as the Dental Place group, and also our YouTube channel, the Dental Practice Fixer. So replays will definitely be there. So as Alan said, he went through a lot of information. I'm sure many of you took really good notes, but if there's something you missed or you just want to see it again, those replays will be available. Secondly, thanks so much. We've gotten so many great questions. We're going to get to as many as we possibly can, but we're not going to be able to get to all of them. It'll just be impossible. You don't want to be here till midnight tonight and past that. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to have a place, maybe on our website or somewhere, we'll let you know that we're going to address as many questions and answers as we possibly can, the ones we didn't get to today. So just thanks so much for your attention and for all the great questions and feedback we're getting. It's amazing. But we'll get right into the questions now. We'll do as many as we can. So Alan, first question that came in that I'll give to you is, would an associate receiving a 1099 qualify as being on my payroll? I pay her monthly.
Great question. So this has all changed since last weekend. The associates, Dave, as a 1099 get to apply tomorrow, Friday, April 10th. Brand new change. Good for you all to hear this. So please check with your bank, because you have to file for the PPP loan through your bank. They should be accepting applications tomorrow. It'll be a different application than we all filed in preparation, because as a sole proprietor, Dave, as you know, they particularly don't have any employees. They're just an associate, and you wouldn't have to render like W-2s. If they do have employees, they should have filed last week, or quite frankly, filed now. Good question.
Rich, unmute.
Forgot to unmute. You don't want to hear me rustling my earbuds during the lecture part. So thanks for that. So we've got a bunch of questions, as Dave said. Next one, and also before I ask the next question, I just want to say, Alan, you are very very kind and humble. Not to give yourself a plug, but I would imagine some people here would want to be in touch with you post webinar. I know your website is schiffcpa.com, as you see in his background, SCHIFFCPA.com. How about if somebody wants to send you a direct email? How would they?
They could send it to aschiff, ASCHIFF at schiffcpa.com. Aschiff at schiffcpa.com. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, okay, here's a question. Can an independent contractor associate, that's in quote marks, associate, who is incorporated and gets a 1099, get unemployment or help from the CARES Act or the SBA business relief?
Hey, good question. Another good one. Wow. We got folks that are paying attention. That's awesome. It's kind of crazy, because when you're self-employed, you can't file for unemployment. But now, unfortunately, with the COVID-19, you can. And most of the states are redoing their websites to allow you to file for unemployment, even if you are the shareholder or officer, president, vice president of your corporation. If you are a independent contractor, you can file for unemployment. If you're a sole member LLC, you're a partner in a partnership, all of you can file for unemployment. Rich and Dave, the big thing there is the unemployment's controlled by the states. It's not controlled by the federal government. So depending on what state you're located in, I would check with the state. I would go into the state's website and find out when you can apply. But you absolutely can apply for unemployment.
Excellent. Thanks. This question came in earlier. I think you did end up answering this, but I'm going to repeat it just in case some people maybe didn't, because it's pretty important. So the person asks, can I apply for both EIDL and PPP?
Yes, and it's a good question, Dave, because there's confusion, because initially it came out, everybody thought you couldn't, you either did one or the other. We knew all along at the ADCPA they could, so the answer is yes, you can apply for the EIDL and the PPP. Remember, the purpose of the EIDL is you get 30-year amortization, but you use it for current payables to pay your current expenses. The PPP is really the paycheck protection loan that is really for when we finally go back to work to pay those that were unemployed wages and use those PPP funds for loan forgiveness.
Cool. I was wondering, I'm a big fan of acronyms and backronyms. I'm always wondering if EIDL was chosen because we're idle right now, so they need to come up with this. Rich, I came up with the same thing, even though it stands for Economic Injuries Disaster Loan, the EIDL is idle. Nothing's happening. It's great.
Great.
I mean, it would be tougher to have an acronym for like sitting around with your thumb up, where. So they had to make it idle. Okay, and again, as Dave said before, I think some of these are talking about, but they were highlighted to us as really important questions. So if it's repetition, it's because people want to know again. That is, can I apply for unemployment as an S corp?
Yes, yes, you can apply for unemployment as an S corp. You're an employee of your corporation. You need to have wages, so make sure you've taken wages out of your S corp. And as long as your wages have been reported to the unemployment division, yes, you can file for unemployment.
Excellent. Next question I have here is, why is this night different? Oh, I got the wrong one. Sorry about that.
I think, didn't you get 4 questions about that?
There were 4. There were 4. There were definitely 4. And then we're going to give the answer. Okay. Little webinar humor here. Okay.
Yeah, very little.
Okay. Can self-employed people now apply for workers' comp?
Workers' comp. I'm going to say, we're talking about workers' comp. This is insurance. I would say probably not, but I would check with your commercial insurance agent on that. Workers' comp. To me, workers' comp, if you're self-employed, you probably need a good disability policy, more so than workers' comp. Workers' comp is really, if Becky or Sally get hurt on the job, they slip on a wet operatory floor and they get hurt, then you have workers' comp. But workers' comp for a sole proprietor, to me, would be like disability insurance, personal disability. Okay.
Thanks.
Keep those floors dry. Always good.
Yeah, that's right.
Great advice.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember somebody on our Dental Place Facebook page, and this question reminded me of it. They put something up like, "I'm going to apply for everything I can, and then I'll see what happens, and I'll just let the chips fall as they may and sort it out later." So the question was, to be more specific, can we only apply for one loan through the SBA or through these programs?
No, you can apply for both. You can. The EIDL has to be applied, Rich, through the SBA. And the PPP has to be applied for through a SBA preferred lender. Yeah.
And the paths won't cross, like they're not doing cross-checking and saying we have money to go around, and that's the tough one.
They will cross if you choose to refinance, kind of roll your EIDL into the PPP. The paths could cross. Yes, the paths could cross. Very much so. Yeah, and you have an opportunity to refinance your EIDL into the PPP. Remember, the PPP is the total loan forgiveness. The EIDL you do have to pay back. Your PPP loan won't be greater. It will not be greater than the 2.5 times the formula I've given. So you got to meet with your financial advisor and see if it makes sense for you to roll any part of the EIDL into the PPP. And this gets a little bit confusing, but if you use the PPP for current payroll, that portion of the loan has to be rolled into the PPP. You can't get around it. So that's why, just to try to keep it simple, we're trying to encourage all clients just to use the EIDL for expenses and not payroll.
Thanks. Before I read the next question, just real quickly, I saw something come through the stream there. Joshua says, Alan Schiff is amazing. There's more there, which I'm not going to read, but he's so right. But it's true. You're like the best out there, but that really did come through, Alan. That's why I read that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank Joshua for that.
It was signed Mrs. Schiff.
So next question. Do I have to furlough employees to be eligible for SBA loans?
No, not at all. No. In fact, I have a number of clients that are going to continue to pay their employees and just take the retention tax credit and not deal with the PPP loan at all. So no, none of that's required. None of that's required.
This next question, kind of a part B to that, maybe. It says, how did the SBA loans work when some employees were furloughed and some were not?
Almost a similar question. It really doesn't matter if they're furloughed or laid off. The test, Rich, is the number of employees employed as of February 15th. Measure that, and you have to have 75% of them back by the end of June. So you could be doing whatever you want during the interim right now, but the point is you have a beginning date and an end date. So the beginning date's February 15th, the end date's the end of June.
So you could furlough everyone, and then as long as you bring 75% back on June 30th,
you can almost have 100% loan forgiveness. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting there.
Dave, we need to.
Sorry,
but
I didn't hear what you said. You're VoIPing a little bit. I didn't hear.
No, we're not VoIPing, not vaping. That's for sure. No, when we said we could furlough everyone, I said, Dave, we need to have a talk about furlough. I'm so sorry, but just relax until June 30th.
Tell me when. Okay.
Those mountains look pretty tempting, I got to tell you.
Okay, next question for Alan. How much of the SBA disaster loan is forgivable?
None of the disaster loans forgivable unless you roll it into the PPP loan. So the EIDL loan would have to be paid back at 3.75% over a 30-year period for any of that you retain. I had one client tell me they're going to get the EIDL loan because they're thinking about buying a building, and they would use the EIDL loan as a down payment for the building in the future. It's 30-year financing. We'll have to check the rules when that happens, but that, to me, potentially is a really good strategy. Really good strategy.
Wow.
We had another client on my webinar this morning, gave a really good idea, and I want to share it with you. He's out of Fort Worth, Texas, and this is what he's thinking. He's thinking about getting a PPP loan now, even though everybody's out of work. Get the PPP loan. He would pay himself. You're allowed to pay yourself $8,333 a month, $8,333. Pay his associate, pay his hygienist, the three highest wage employees in the practice. When you finally get closer to week 7 and 8, you would then pay all of your chairside and front desk. When you're about week 7 or 8, you would meet the 75% of the PPP loan, and then the other 25% you can use for the other expenses. And that's what he's thinking about doing. I think it will work. But once again, you got to consider where we're going to be in 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. Are your employees still unemployed? Are they willing to come off of unemployment to get paid, to potentially go back on unemployment if we're still not going back to work? And we'll have to see what happens. It's my personal feeling. This is just my personal feeling. And I'm just talking to you from my heart. It's a shame what's happened, because the timeline, like I started off with, was the timeline, and it's changed. And it's changed for really the worse, because the PPP loans were supposed to be there when this whole thing calmed down. We all felt safe. We probably understood the new PPE requirements, all the different things, the negative, I guess, the oxygen and all that we're going to have to be aware of, all the additional costs we're going to have. And the PPP loan was there to help us pay for all that. And it's not going to be there because of what's happening. And I hope all the U.S. citizens realize what's happening, and they write their Congress folks, and they tell them that although the banks are telling us we have to take the funds because the SBA dispersed the funds to the bank, and we have to take them within 10 days and we have to use them in 8 weeks, how can we use them when all of our employees are unemployed? It doesn't make sense. And guys, think about this. It's not just dentistry. We're all in dentistry, and we're like narrow, right? Look at the airline industry. Look at the cruise ships. Look at Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL. All those should be happening right now. We have the XFL. We have all the travel industry in terms of hotels and conventions that are all unemployed. How about the major malls? We in dentistry are competing for this $349 billion with a lot of different industries. And your favorite restaurant will get the money, no different than our favorite dental practice, and they can't spend the money because all their employees are unemployed. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And I sure don't want to get political on this, because that's not what this is all about, but it just breaks my heart, because the government was trying to do something really, really well, and it made sense with what their plan was, but the plan changed. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to share with you right now, it's April 9th, it's going to change again. I'm going to predict it's going to change again and change again until they get it right. And that's what makes it so hard for consultants, because consultants are consulting with you on information they have as today, but it changes tomorrow. And one of the things, and I'm not a big self-promoter, because to me, I think information speaks for itself. But the one thing I would like to promote is the ADCPA website. and listen to the most recent podcast that we put up on April 5th about the EIDL loans and the PPP loans. April 5th, it's April 9th, it's all changed. But I want you to listen to it because 90% of it's really, really good. And I don't mean to be promoting it. That's not what this is about. This is about giving you all information. And Dave and Rich, it's so heartbreaking that the government came out with these programs that everybody heard that we're going to have all this loan forgiveness. And we said, oh my God, this is going to be great. We won't have to worry about collecting receivables. We won't have to worry about generating income. We'll have the money to pay the employees. And the problem is it's all converging at the same time, the EIDL loan and the PPP loan, and it wasn't designed for that. And it's just sad. That's all. And without getting emotional, it's just very, very sad because unfortunately what's probably going to happen in years from now, when we finally measure the effectiveness of the PPP loans, whatever the PPP loans are, or what we thought they would be, there'll be very little forgiveness because we can't use it for what they were intended for. So you're going to wind up with a loan, not bad at 1% over 2 years, but that wasn't why you got into the PPP process to begin with. So sorry I went on a little bit of a spiel.
No. It was very interesting, Alan, to hear kind of the humanistic side of it because, we're always thinking about our businesses, our team, ourselves, our patients. But yeah, there's a lot of other stuff out there. And I knew you were going to mention the NFL because I think this is the first time I've ever seen you not wearing a Ravens shirt. but it was really interesting, really well thought out stuff. So thanks for that. Before I ask the question I'm supposed to ask, though, I kind of have a corollary to the last question because I saw fly by on the chat. Somebody said, "I've never offered health insurance to my team members before. Can I use this money to start offering them health insurance?" I was just curious, is there going to be a lot of oversight? Are people really going to be looking at us and seeing what we use this money for if we are lucky enough to get it?
Well, first of all, Rich, that's a great question. It really shows me the attendees are really listening to this. So the effective date for all these expenses is February 15th. So if you had a group health plan in place as of February 15th, it would then qualify for these other, costs as we go forward. So it's it's everything. It's your lease, your mortgage, the rent, and the group health insurance all had to be in place as of February 15th. And that would include your utilities as well. I mean, obviously, they would have to be in place. No, you can't play games. I will tell you this. In the SBA, there's frequently asked questions almost every day. And today is Thursday. So Tuesday's frequently asked questions. There was a question right on this point. And the point was, when I submit my PPP loan application, how much scrutiny will the bank have? How liberal they're going to be? And I'm going to, what I read, and you're all welcome to read it, it's all public. It basically said if the banker feels that you're telling the truth on the application, you'll get approved for your PPP loan. So it's not going to go through heavy underwriting, heavy credit, and all that. So the good news here is if you submitted your application like you should have, then the approval process will go pretty quick, and you'll get your money. That's a really, really good thing. So all these expenses had to be in place as of February 15th of 2020 before the pandemic really hit. And Rich, and Dave, here's another good thing. We may have some folks on here that are just starting out, and they said, well, I don't have 12 months of payroll. What do I do? So there's a special rule for that. So you would take the January 2020 payroll and the February 2020 payroll, and you average it, and that becomes your monthly payroll because you don't have 12 months worth of data. So we may have somebody that's just recently done a startup. Maybe they left the practice, maybe a recent grad that decided to open up a practice. They don't have 12 months worth of payroll, but the formula is January and February of 2020 divided by 2. Rich, and Dave, I wanted to share, because this is breaking news. I got this morning, and I would like to read part of an email I got. It says the SBA is under fire for emergency grants. The federal program to help small companies weather the coronavirus fallout is failing to distribute the funds quickly, according to lawmakers, business advocates, and entrepreneurs, many of whom are counting on the aid to survive. Congress has directed the SBA last month to provide up to $10,000 in business grants within 3 days of application. However, it's taken anywhere between 7 to 10 days to get the grants. So the SBA and the U.S. Treasury is under tremendous fire. And I suspect when we see the nightly news tonight and they have the segment on the economics, the business side, I think you're going to see some people potentially calling out the government for saying that, you didn't keep your promise. I filed for the application. You told me within 3 days. Now you're telling me 7 to 10 days. Nobody's gotten any money. Like, what's going on? So we're all in this together. It's my purpose, and I feel that I was put here, on this earth to try to educate those that have that need help understanding stuff that's complex like this. So I'm trying to share it to you in layman's terms so you all can understand that what we thought the programs would be under the EIDL and the PPP just aren't happening, and it's creating tremendous confusion, tremendous anxiety. And if any of you do have anxiety over all these financial issues, I'm going to ask you, please reach out to either myself or any of our members in our academy. We're here to help you, and please don't do anything foolishly. Failure is just not an option. We are here for you, and I'm sure this is about as stressful as it gets. Not knowing when your practice is coming back, not knowing if you have a practice, not knowing if you have financing to deal with that. But I want to reassure you that it'll be okay. We just got to be patient for this all to work out. And we all need to really lobby every congressperson we know and just tell them that what the initial purpose of these loans it never happened. It never took place. And it's unfortunate, but we need the government to help us during this crisis. Sorry, I just want to add that.
No, it's all really great stuff. Okay, so the next question on the list was, I pay my 401k contributions at year end. If I pay the accruing payroll benefit now, thereby increasing the payroll, would my PPP loan increase? Good question.
Yeah, great question. Excellent question. So thank you. The answer is yes. So it's the payroll costs that have occurred over the last 12 months. Remember, we're not just saying payroll. Payroll costs would include your gross payroll limited to $100,000, plus the health insurance, plus your 401k, just like you said, Rich, and also your state unemployment. So the answer is yes, it would qualify for the PPP forgiveness.
Excellent. I've got a question, but before I ask that, I'm going to do kind of the same. There have been a lot of questions scrolling by quickly. A lot of them have this, they're kind of the same, so I'll just ask it kind of in a very general way. Alan, could you talk about the difference with calculating full-time versus part-time for PPP? A lot of people just aren't really sure about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question too. Full-time, we think of 40 hours a week, but most of our practices are really working 32 hours a week. Rich and Dave, when we were growing up, practices worked Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday they were off, and then Thursday and Friday they retooled it.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. That's not how it is today. I'm showing you my age too, by the way. But today, you're working Monday through Thursday, and then Friday's either a CE day or you do some administrative stuff, and then of course you're off Saturday and Sunday. So you're really talking about 32 hours. So the way I would measure the full-time equivalence is, what does your 32 hours look like under a normal work week, and determine your full-time equivalence off of that. Like, for example, if you have an 8-hour day and Becky works Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, she's one full-time equivalent. If Becky comes in the morning and Sally comes in the afternoon, they're two part-time, but they would equal one full-time equivalent when you added the two together. Many of us may have that because you may have a hygienist working Monday and Tuesday, and a second hygienist working Wednesday and Thursday. So that would, those two hygienists would qualify for one full-time equivalent. One's working 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. The other one's working Wednesday and Thursday. Good question.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And here's the question that I had. Somebody writes in, is it best to lay, and this question is difficult because it's not really only like a financial question, but I think it also becomes like a humanistic / emotional question as well. So it's got to be answered from, I think, all aspects. The question is it best to lay off your staff or to keep them employed?
Well, that's a personal decision. It's a personal decision. It's a financial decision. One of our clients, they have a pediatric practice, really, really well-run practice, very profitable. And he said to me, he says, you know what? it's easier for me to pay my employees because when we come back, they're going to be employed. They're going to really understand the gratitude that I'm showing them. They'll really appreciate that. And by the way, I have the A team now. I want to have the A team when I come back. And I think that says a lot. And part of the problem that we have in dentistry, we have major employers hiring right now. And we may lose some front desk and chairside to Amazon, CVS, and Walmart. Amazon's hiring 100,000 employees. CVS is hiring 50,000 employees. And our employees may feel desperate. They may feel like I'm done with dentistry. And so therefore, we may not get Becky, Sally, and Joan back. We just may not. And we may have to rehire. So this one practice in Columbia, Maryland is paying all of their employees despite what's going on. And they've really valued their employees. You know, your employees are your number one asset. It's not operatories 1, 2, 3, or 4, or the autoclave or digital radiography. It's your employees. Same is true in my practice. My employees are my number one asset, and we all need to respect that and appreciate that. And so it becomes a personal decision. Coming back to the question, you can, whether it's furlough or lay them off, it's really just a lack of work. I mean, we just don't have work for them to do. 99% of you have done this, and there's plenty of monies in the unemployment coffers to pay these folks, including yourself, so you can just have them collect unemployment. Last week on your podcast with Dr. Joanne Block-Reef, Joanne talked about, like, these are things that you could be doing while you're sitting idle. And she gave us a tremendous list of marketing opportunities that we ought to be considering. And there's a lot of things that you put on the side that you could be doing. And if you chose to bring your employees back and pay them, then maybe you ought to get that list out, that laundry list. And I'm sure Joanne would be happy to share them with you again, and develop Joanne's list and potentially your own list, and then feel like you're getting something in return for paying your employees, as opposed to them sitting on, you're going to like this, Rich and Dave, as opposed to sitting on the couch eating bonbons and watching Oprah.
No, don't do that, whatever you do.
Don't do that.
I could get that out, but I
Don't do that. Don't do it. You know, Alan, thanks so much for mentioning that webinar we did with Dr. Reef. It was really fabulous, and we've got a rerun. We have a replay of that. Right, there's a rerun of the Jeffersons, and we have a replay of that on our YouTube channel. So you can go to YouTube, look at the Dental Practice Fixers channel, and that webinar with Joanne Reef will be there. We've also got a webinar we did the day before that with some of our coaching team that was great. This one will be on there if you came in late or you want to recommend it to some friends. And Alan, I love what you said about the A team. I pity the fool that doesn't have the A team. But you know, it's really, you know, these are people who are willing to work so hard for the practice and the patients. So I guess if you can't afford to do it, it's a great thing to do. You know, the opposite of that is somebody actually commented to me that they had it, and no disrespect to our many great team members who are watching this webinar, but somebody told me they had a team member who they just have been wanting to get rid of or fire, or let's say give a new job opportunity to for a long time, and for many reasons, emotional or whatever, they just couldn't do it, and this was their opportunity to do it. So we're certainly not encouraging people to do that, but you know, maybe if there's a bad apple in your bunch, the timing's right for you. What can we say? What can we say? Okay, so we've got a few more questions here on our official question sheet. I know we've tried to answer some of the streaming questions as well. This is, as an LLC disregarded entity, because I'm the only member, am I able to collect unemployment?
Yes, because an LLC disregarded entity is a sole proprietor. You can collect unemployment, and Rich, one more thing, you can file for a PPP loan beginning tomorrow, April 10th. Yes, good question.
Great.
Good question. May I add a suggestion? Can we take some of the live questions in the chat? Because I think it would, you know, potentially help those that are.
Alan, were there something you specifically saw that you wanted to grab?
I saw something a little bit earlier about. Let me just scroll up. It did catch my eye. Yeah. Here's a great one. How big do you feel is the risk? This came in at 2 o'clock from ADAR. How big do you feel there's a risk of waiting for the PPP loans? And I think that is a great question. Caught my eye as the questions were scrolling there. There's risk. There's no doubt. You may want to talk to your bank. Maybe your bank can give you a feel. That's the problem that we have as consultants, because if I tell all of you to wait because you don't need the PPP loan now, which makes sense to wait, but then when you go to apply, if your bank ran out of the allocated funds to the bank, you're out. So I have to be very, very careful to suggest that you wait. You know, what's the worst that can happen? You get the loan and you have a 1% loan that's paid over 2 years. That's not a bad deal either, but there is risk in waiting. There's definitely risk in waiting. So I think that was a great question, and I just happened to see it scroll.
I'll tell you, and here's another one that I caught my attention to. It's a good one, so I'll read that one. It just came in a few minutes ago. Well, first it says, "Hey, David and Rich, thanks for hosting a great webinar." That's what caught my attention, actually, and you're very welcome, David Hodges.
They're trying to kiss butt to get this question, so we know that. It's
like folding an application form in a drawing and hoping you're going to take that one out, you know. But the question is actually very good. My question is, we have a 1099 employee that we would like to change to a W-2 and then pay them with a PPA loan. Is this possible?
Nope.
Next.
We talked about MODs, PPPs, and this is going to be SOL.
Oh.
No, you can't do it. You're out of luck. No, but really, all serious, you got to add a little bit of humor to it. But the serious part of it is you got to be what you were as of February 15th. You can't change the rules now. So the measurement date's February 15th. So if this 1099 was an employee as of February 15th, the answer would be yes. But you can't change it now in, you know, subsequent period from February 15th through March or April. No, it's too late.
Well, also, there are pretty strict rules that determine whether an employee can actually, it has to be a 1099 or a W-2, right? You can't just like pick or choose. It's got to be,
right.
There are rules you got to go by.
Right. You know, when I teach at dental school, at all the dental schools, that's one of the first things I start off with, because many of the students are offered employment contracts, but they're offered employment contracts as a independent contractor and not as an employee. And that's because the employer wants to save on the payroll taxes. But when you really look at the IRS regulations defining what is an employee and what is an independent contractor, it's hard not to treat someone as an employee versus an independent contractor.
Exactly.
And the hardest rule is who provides the tools being operatories 1, 2, 3, and 4, who sets your schedule, and who tells you what to do, how to do it, and who can potentially terminate you or terminate an employee. So it's hard to get around. So my point is, thank God if you were an associate and you were treated as an employee, you're covered. If you're treated as an independent contractor, you have to wait until tomorrow. Good question.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Rich,
Dave, I think you're next up on the list here.
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay, I'll do another one from the list for sure. So yeah, this one, is it best to lay off your staff or no, we did that one already. So the next one, should the doctor collect unemployment?
Yeah, the doctor should definitely collect unemployment. Yeah. If they're an employee of the practice, they're an employee. If they're a sole proprietor, you have to wait for the state websites to get rebuilt, but yes, you can file unemployment. I got to read this one from one of our competitors, Kane Wooders. It came in at 201. Well, because it's wrong. It says Kane Wooders put out, I'm sorry, but Kane Wooders put out an opinion that if you took out the PPP loan, you could delay the receipt of funds. Well, unless it's misunderstood. So let me just share with you. It has nothing to do with the delay in the funds. It's all controlled by the SBA and your bank. So the rule is, and it's by the U.S. Treasury. This is called the U.S. Treasury Guidelines. Guys, this is like A plus B equals C. It's that clear. The U.S. Treasury Guidelines, as of today on April 9th, say once the SBA says to the bank, you can release the funds, the bank has 10 days to release the funds. That's it. Once the funds are released, they're released, and then the 8-week period starts. Now, what could have been misunderstood here is there's 2 banks that I'm aware of that are disregarding the U.S. Treasury Guidelines. And that could have created the confusion with this Kane Wooders things. And those banks are Live Oak Bank in Massachusetts and Southern Bank in Norfolk, Virginia Beach. Now, I'm not saying they're violating it, but that's what they've chosen to do. But I would tell you, all the other banks that I've spoken to are absolutely towing the line with the guidelines. And there's no wavering here. And believe me, we have substantial funds in many, many banks throughout the Academy of Dental CPAs. And despite all that weight, they are not wavering. They are not wavering because they don't want to get in trouble with the U.S. Treasury nor the SBA. So once again, the guidelines are the U.S. Treasury has said that as soon as the funds are released from the SBA to the bank has 10 days to distribute it. You must, as the recipient or the borrower, have to take those funds. There's no other choices. And it's sad because we don't need the funds right now.
Which brings up another question too. Just real quick sidebar before I ask the question that I was given on my list here. I noticed a bunch of people were asking, like, is so-and-so bank an SBA bank? Is, Fifth Third Bank? Is M&T Bank? Whatever. How do you find out?
There's actually a website. Good. I got to dig it out for you here. There's actually a website that that actually lists 1,800 banks that are SBA preferred lenders. And if you go to the website, quite frankly, you could just Google SBA preferred banks and you'll see a whole list. I think that's probably just easier than giving a URL. But it can only be through an SBA preferred lender. That's the key. So maybe you Google SBA preferred lenders or your bank's name, and you'll get a list of about 1,800 banks.
Fantastic. Well, here's the official question, and this is a really, I'm hoping this question doesn't apply to most of our listeners, but I think it might bring up an interesting conversation. And this person asks, will the SBA deny a loan to one who answers yes to the question, have you ever had a criminal conviction? And they said that they had a criminal conviction 30 years ago.
Well, I don't necessarily know the credit or underwriting process, but that question's on there for a purpose. I would suspect if you answered it, yes, I had a criminal conviction, that potentially could deny you the loan. If you did answer it, yes, I would probably put an explanation there as to what had occurred with hopes of getting some level of compassion. But unfortunately, that question's there for a purpose, and I think we all understand what the purpose is.
Wow, that's a shame if somebody did a minor thing 30 years ago that that's sad.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if somebody, was kiting checks or misusing funds or something, that's a difference. You can see why the government, I'm throwing in my 2 cents, which is not what this webinar is all about. But
right.
Hopefully, whoever asked that, if your crime wasn't in the financial nature, I hope that they do give you a break.
Mm-hmm.
If it was like parking in a handicapped spot or something like that. Then
No, forget that. I say no break to someone that does that. Only if it's at a concert.
There's one here that says my bank still hasn't started accepting PPP applications. Should I be concerned? This is from Brett Hansman, 204. Brett, thanks for your question. The biggest bank that I know that hasn't received or hasn't set up to be received the PPP applications is Citicorp. I'm not sure which bank you're referring to. You may want to consider potentially PNC. PNC is accepting new customers. You do have to open up a checking account with them and sign up for online banking. That's not an endorsement for PNC. I'm just sharing with you that they are accepting applications. You may want to check with another bank in your market, which I think M&T Bank, Brett's in your market as well, and see whether or not they would be willing to accept a PPP application. Chances are you're going to have to set up a checking account and have online banking to apply for that bank's loan. Good question.
I've been hearing things about Wells Fargo too, I think, as everyone has. They've run out of money. They weren't given enough money because they had some improprieties in the past. Is that pretty much the case?
Yesterday, they were just given more money and given the go to continue.
Good.
So
Good.
At one point, they were endorsed by the ADA, so they have a tremendous dental clientele, if you will, just because of that endorsement. And so we need them in dentistry because of so many of our friends in dentistry are banking with them. So that created a tremendous scare because when we found out they ran out of money, it really had to do more with the mandate and their behavior in the past than as opposed to the funds that they were allocated. But that surely creates a scare. And then it comes back to the original question we asked, should I wait to apply for the PPP or should I apply now? And should I be concerned whether or not my bank should run out of money? So it's all good concerns. I would definitely consult with your CPA and consult with the bank and see if you can get any type of information of any concern that you may have and what the timing of the PPP loan is.
Got it.
Yeah.
I was saying, Alan, let's do this. We've had so many questions and so many continue to come in, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to answer every single one. But Rich and I, and then with Sylvia's help, we're going to try to get these other questions answered. Look for an email from us. As we said, the webinars will be replayed on our Facebook pages as well as YouTube. But we want to thank everybody for joining us and asking such fantastic questions, and also thank Alan for this great information. Alan, is there anything that you didn't mention, any way you want to wrap anything up with any kind of final thoughts whatsoever?
Yeah, and I would thank you, Dave. There's one last thing I want to share, especially for those that haven't followed the PPP. Most of the banks have like a Dropbox that you put everything in, but you need to have your documents in a PDF format. So if they ask for W-2s, you need to scan all your W-2s. If they ask for 4 quarters of 941s, you have to have them scanned. If they ask for the annual 940, you have to have them scanned. If they ask for a copy of your driver's license, front and back, you need it scanned. So that would include your retirement plan contributions and your health insurance. So one of the biggest, besides all the other advice I've given you, one of the biggest pearls is don't get frustrated on the application process with the PPP. Just be ready and be prepared. If you are, you can probably be in and out within 10 to 15 minutes because you have everything ready to go. You may want to put all the scanned documents either on your desktop or your thumb drive so they're easily accessible. My closing comment, Dave and Rich, is guys, there's help out there and you got to seek help. And you can't take this on your own, because as you can see, it has changed. It's probably changed while we've been doing this webinar. It just changes so quickly, and you really need to work with someone that is familiar with these programs and be able to whatever could be maximized for your practice. And understand your friends may have different scenarios within their own practices. So what may work for one friend may not work for you. So you'd be better off talking to your professionals about it. And I just want to leave you with hope. We're going to get through this. This isn't like 2008 when we had a financial crisis. This is a health crisis. We will get through this. We're starting to see some of the statistics come down because of the social distancing. But I want to give everybody hope as we conclude today's webinar. There is plenty of resources out there. Please seek those resources. And don't ever feel there's a dumb question. All your questions are good. If you didn't know, you wouldn't ask it. So please ask your questions so we can get you answers to it. And once again, Rich and Dave, I want to thank you both for having me. I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. But it's fun also sharing the information with all your attendees. So thank you.
Well, Alan, we really appreciate it. I also want to thank Fat Merchant for helping us make this webinar possible. If you missed it at the beginning, Fat Merchant is our really, really favorite credit card processor, and they'll save you money every month because they don't charge an overage percentage. So we thought that was really relevant to bring up at a time when people are having some cash flow problems. And knowing that, they've decided to make your first 2 months subscription free. So if you want to know more about that, just go to mado.com/save, MADOW.com/save. You can start saving money right away on your credit card processing. Alan, you have gotten the most amazing comments in our chat box.
Really?
It's just so, yeah, absolutely. So gratifying to see.
Well, thank you.
Your knowledge is fantastic, but the way you share it is even better. You really keep it on a easy to understand, casual level, and so applicable. So again,
say that 6 times.
Alan Schiff. You can get him at schiffcpa.com, SCHIFF CPA.com. So from the Mado Center and from Alan Schiff, thanks so much everybody for being on today's webinar.
Thanks, Alan.
See you guys. Thank you. Thank you.